Battlegrounds where legends reign. Aussie gridiron pride unchained. Hear the thunder, feel the flame. Touchdowns and tackles, ain't no shame in the Aussie gridiron game. From Brisbane Light to Perth.
G'day Aussie Gridiron fans, and welcome to the G'day Gridiron podcast, brought to you by the Aussie Gridiron Network. It's the reaction show for the AGN playoff series wildcard round, and I am joined on this lovely Tuesday evening by the guy who started all this with me way back in 2022, and is of course MANJOT. Melly, how you going, buddy?
I'm going good. I mean, today, yesterday, the day before, we've had awesome round of playoff games. I mean, a few boring games here and there, but we did have a couple classics as well. So, really keen to talk about it all. Just been really enjoying, just chilling, sitting back, watching playoff games, posting stuff on Pastry Press. Just being the life, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, there were a few boring games, and I know I was onto you boys just in a group chat, just going, "What the hell is with some of these games?" It just felt like it was a bit different to previous years, or to last year specifically, where some of the games were a bit closer in score, but at least it was usually due to one team sort of getting some garbage time, or at least some fourth quarter stuff rolling, which made games a little more interesting towards the end. But this year, wow, we just had some blowouts, didn't we?
Yeah, bunch of blowouts, especially those first 4 games. Those were just terrible, and then got an amazing Sunday night game just to really give us like that playoff spark, and then kind of finish on a whimper today. So bunch of blowouts, 5 out of 6 blowouts, and one amazing finish. So yeah, it was really, in terms of the whole weekend, definitely one of the more boring-sided, one-sided wildcard weekends we have seen. It's just been, I do agree with that, Ian. It's just not been a very fun wildcard weekend.
No, let's start with that really exciting game that we had to end Monday football here in Australia, which was, of course, the Sunday night football game for the Americans, Commanders and at the Buccaneers, and that went right down to the wire. It was very, very exciting. Some great football displayed by both teams, and the Bucs sort of just plotted away with points, and while the Commanders did their usual thing where they got them in buckets, and it came right down to the wire, didn't it, mate?
Yes, it did, and I was listening to the Commanders radio call, calling them the Cardiac Commanders and the Clutch Commanders. Very apt nicknames for them because, wow, they love to keep it close, especially Jaden Daniels, that kid. I can't go on more about him. I was talking about on the preview show, I was so damn close to picking the Commanders. I knew it in me. I just couldn't do it because I thought Baker and the Bucs would get the job done. And really, the Commanders, their defense, I would have to say, really stepped up quite a bit in this game. They did a really good job defensively to be able to stay in this one, especially recovering that fumble right near their own goal line against Baker when he just failed that handoff there. They really forced pressure onto Baker for most of the night, forcing him to scramble everywhere. It was a really good performance from the Commanders defense, and I think they are a group with Dan Quinn, their new head coach, has really improved this season.
Yeah, if it wasn't for that weird fourth quarter, or like late fourth quarter snap where the centers seemed to snap the ball before anybody else on the offense was ready for the Buccaneers, I think we would have seen a slightly different outcome in terms of not having this finish in regulation. We were really heading for OT for sure, and the Bucs were coming back at that point, but it was just like this, I don't know, this weird snap where the center just was totally off on cadence. all of a sudden he's just put the ball up into Baker's hands, and there was this like a couple of seconds where absolutely nothing happened, and it just destroyed them in terms of the O-line. There's just a couple of silly mistakes by the Bucks, which is to be expected. It's playoff football. It's pressure time, and these guys play at the highest level for long periods of time. Sooner enough, you're gonna crack, and there is going to be that bit of pressure that's just going to really force you to make those mistakes. And that's what other teams are trying to do, obviously, as well. The teams at these levels, they're all pretty much at the same level, and you're just trying to make a team make mistakes because that's how you get the win.
Yeah, and just as I said, when we're talking about pressure, and what I said on the preview show, this guy, Jaden Daniels, he's a guy that really loves to just play under pressure. He's a guy that steps up to the pressure. As I said on last week's show, he was even cracking jokes with Jalen Carter on the other side in a 2-minute drill situation when he spikes the ball. And look, even this week, he's just in his first playoff game. Rookies on the road in a playoff game usually don't win. Jaden Daniels was like the 4th quarterback ever to win a road playoff game as a rookie. And really, it just shows his poise playing under pressure, while the Buccaneers kind of crumbled under the pressure, as you said, Ian, with those little miscues here and there. I feel like Jaden Daniels really stepped up with his 262 passing yards, couple touchdowns, and crucially, I think as well, no turnovers from him. And I think that was really a difference in the game. It's just how poised he was. It's the reason why I'm really loving this kid, Ian. It's just, he's such a good player. And honestly, I'm still kicking myself for not fully believing in him during the preview show. I was like so close to just picking them, but I just couldn't do it. But Jaden proved me wrong. I'm glad to be proven wrong because I just love this guy.
Yeah, and the Commanders now move forward to divisional round to take on the Lions in Detroit next week. Going to be a fantastic game up there in Detroit, home of the Lions. The Lions at home, and they're going to be, just coming out very aggressive at Ford Field. So that's going to be a fantastic game to preview later in the week between those two amazing teams. Let's go to the other side of the coin, the AFC side, where the Texans and the Chargers played early. First game off the rank. The Texans' usual slot for wildcards, it would seem. They just can't. If the Texans are going to be in the wildcard round, this is the game they're going to be in. It just seems to be fated every single year. No one believed in the Texans. Certainly, hardly any of us did. Everybody was really onto the Chargers, and the way the Texans have been playing for the last few weeks, everyone thought there's no way they are going to beat the Chargers, and Harbaugh here, they were going to come out, and Jim Harbaugh was just going to come out and firing with his team. But the exact opposite happened. The Texans, it seems, had been laying in wait for weeks, it would appear. They've just been slowly plotting how they're going to get to this point and what they're going to do. And at home against the Chargers started hot. And then second quarter, the Texans just took over and absolutely dominated this game. Joe Mixon had 106 yards on the ground. Nico Collins, 122 receiving yards, were absolutely on fire with CJ Stroud. And this and the defense as well, the Texans defense, just looked like the Texans team that we thought we would be seeing all year, MANJOT.
Yeah, and I think what you said at the end there, the defense, that was really the turning point. Of course, in the regular season, they had a famous game on Sunday Night Football against the Lions. They forced Jared Goff to throw 5 interceptions in that game. Somehow still lost that game, but here they forced, in much of the same way, Justin Herbert to throw for 4 interceptions. And I think that was really underrated from the Texans. We don't really talk a lot about their defense. I think a lot of the talk has been on CJ Stroud and the offense, and that offense has been getting all the headlines. Of course, CJ Stroud had this amazing rookie season, but with a few injuries here and there, they were struggling offensively for a lot of the season. I think, as you said, Ian, Mixon, Collins, Stroud, those 3 really turned up in this game. They really showed why they are key playmakers for the Texans. All 3 of them just really doing their job. few contributions here and there from the other guys, but those three were the main guys on offense. And defensively, of course, how can I go past Derek Stingley, all-pro cornerback? He was an amazing player this whole season. Him and Patrick Surtain were the all-pro corners, so he's a top 2 cornerback in the league, according to the Associated Press. And man, he did show some of those doubters. Some people thought he shouldn't have made the all-pro team, but he was really out there showing everyone with those 2 interceptions. One of them he returned to the house for a pick 6, and it was just an incredible showing from Derek and the secondary as well. They did a really good job locking up the receiving core of the Chargers, apart from one guy on the Chargers, of course, Ladd McConkey.
Ladd McConkey, what a guy, what a rookie. 197 yards off 9 receptions and a TD in there. Huge contribution from Ladd McConkey. Really, and just by him and Justin Herbert really trying to make something happen late in the game and try and claw back some of the deficit that they were amassing, which they did. He got that TD as well. So, you know, it felt like it was coming every now and then, like the Chargers might have had something to combat the Texans, but then the Texans just kept pressuring Herbert and that O-line and just kept hammering down on him. 4 sacks for Justin Herbert, and as you said, 4 interceptions. Really good game on air yards, but passer rating of only 40, mate. That's not a playoff team, realistically. It's not the stat you want as a playoff quarterback either. So, great things by the Texans. They really showed up a lot of people and showed us what they were made of. And, of course, the Texans will now go forward into the divisional round to go to Arrowhead to take on the Chiefs at home. It's going to be an absolutely brilliant game, Texans v Chiefs. The Chiefs, of course, going for that first ever three-peat, 15-2 on the season. 15 wins is outstanding in this league, and it's going to be one hell of a game. All right, let's get my pain and discomfort over with. Yep. Monday night football, Tuesday night here we saw what was supposed to be billed as a sensational game of football in the NFL for the wildcard round, and that's realistically, I imagine, why it was put on Monday Night Football. It was supposed to be very, very different. The 14-3 Minnesota Vikings, as the 5 seed in the NFC, were supposed to go to Los Angeles to take on the 10-7 Rams. Of course, that game, as we said, did get moved to Arizona due to the wildfires in Los Angeles. But what was supposed to be an amazing game by both teams really ended up as an absolute fizzer for one team, and of course the Minnesota Vikings. The Los Angeles Rams sacked Sam Darnold 4 times in the first quarter. He ended up with 9 sacks for a loss of 82 yards on the day. The Rams defense was absolutely crushing everything that the Minnesota Vikings could throw at them on offense. The Minnesota offensive line have been absolutely nowhere for the past 2 games, of course, against the Lions and Aaron Glenn's defense. And now the Rams look like they basically just copy-pasted what happened last week against the Lions, mate.
Yeah, it felt like Aaron Glenn had that blueprint, and it's just really showed in this game. I think the key right here, and this is what Aaron Glenn found in that game, was just you go pressure Donald, get to him, get past this offensive line, send well-timed blitzes, and just get to the quarterback. And trust your guys. Trust your guys on the outside to match with one-on-one with Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, all these great receivers that the Vikings have. And that's exactly the blueprint that the Rams copied. They trusted their guys like Akella Witherspoon and Kobe Duran and all of their great secondary guys, and just really locked down on a few of the players out there. I mean, Jefferson had a good game for sure, but he couldn't do anything if Darnold was just getting sacked left and right every single play. And I think the Rams knew that. They knew where to attack, they knew where to go, and exactly that's where they got the pressure to Darnold. And Darnold, it just felt like the clock was just running out on him every single play, and he had to either throw it away or he had to just take the sack, and he took the sack 9 times. And really, that was a massive turning point in the Vikings season. Just they had everything going for them after week 17, and then once Aaron Glenn found this trick, it just felt like the Rams could just put in their game plan, just stop Sam Darnold, just stop Kevin O'Connell's offense, and it really felt like they could go nowhere. And I feel like that's much the same as we said of the Texans as well. It's just with some of these games this week, it's just the amount of pressure you can get to the quarterback was really important in terms of wins and losses. I think just as we said with the Texans and as we said with the Rams, it was really important to get to the quarterback, forcing these great regular season quarterbacks in Darnold and Herbert to face pressure and in a do-or-die situation, get under enough pressure that it can force them to lose a game.
Yeah, and I think for me, watching this game, the Rams defense was the absolute highlight of this game. They did so well in locking down through their secondary, locking down the Minnesota receivers, that none of these sacks, Manjot, none of those 9 sacks Sam Darnold took were under 3.2 seconds from snap time. One of them was 4.5 seconds before he got sacked. So what that says is the O-line wasn't being able to hold a pocket long enough for Darnold to go through 3rd and 4th reads. They were locking down options, which meant that he had to go to 3rd and 4th reads. But by that time, you had like guys like Jared Verse and Gallimore and Young and Kobe Turner were just in his face and pressuring him from both sides. And the O-line just wasn't able to hold up for that. And then that's why Darnold ended up taking these huge, long sacks too, like over 10 yards on the majority of them. And it's just mad, big props to the Rams defense and their coaching staff for figuring that out, that if you lock them down through your secondary and you make him move in a pocket, or you make him have to go to 3rd and 4th reads, then you're going to have the time to really get to him and sack him. And the Rams offense, mate, it's not like they played badly, but it feels like to me, and watching it, that Stafford and the rest of the offense did just enough for what they had to do to keep the score ticking along. And by the time Jared Verse ended up recovering that fumble and taking it to the house for a pick 6, or a return 6, basically, fumble recovery 6, it was over, and that was before half time. The Rams only scored 3 points in the second half, and good on the Vikings for stopping that rot. But there's no way, the way that the Rams defense was playing, that offense had any chance at all to come back from that massive deficit.
Yeah, and you look at what the Rams offense was doing. They were just playing it safe, making sure they weren't committing any turnovers. Of course, the very controversial non-intentional grounding call was a close one there, and really that was the closest the Vikings defense had to making an impactful game. Just felt like they were trying everything. Even Kevin O'Connell was challenging plays, just trying to get that spark off the defense, trying to get back into the game. That challenge led to the field goal that the Rams scored in the second half as well. So it was just really with the Rams, I think they just were able to do just enough, were able to just play through their game. And really, I think they did a really good job at containing Darnold, and they knew as well on the offensive side that the pressure was off them, of course, even though they were playing in quite hostile conditions with a lot of Vikings fans in Arizona.
Oh,
and
yeah.
We're still doing quite well just with the silent count and everything. So probably a good preparation for going into Philadelphia next week, where the fans will be even more hostile.
Absolutely, mate. Big props to both fan bases. Early numbers, I didn't hear what it ended up being, but early on in the broadcast, they said it was the numbers were about 51% Vikings fans, 49% Rams fans. That's outstanding numbers from both teams, considering you had to travel all the way to Arizona from either direction to watch this game, and especially to the Rams fan base and their families who basically had to uproot themselves and get out of Dodge and move somewhere else whilst their entire city is laid waste to by a wildfire. So
Yeah, I mean, I was seeing ESPN as well. They were showing some of the Rams fans' trips. They got up at 6 a.m. in the morning, got on the bus, just rode all the way down, 600-kilometer bus trip to Arizona. For all the Australian listeners, that's like driving from Canberra to Melbourne, I would have to say, in terms of distance, just a little bit shorter. So, yeah, just real big props to the Rams, their fans, and, giving LA a bit of joy in this tough time.
just hard to do too, I think, is to put as a person, is to put your head and your being into a space where you want to watch football, something like sports, when everything around you, everything you know, that your life is just a mess, essentially. So weird, but props. As you said, mate, they are going into Philadelphia next week, of course, to take on the Philadelphia Eagles, who took on the Green Bay Packers in the NFC Wildcard playoffs. The Eagles ended up 22-10 victors over the Packers, and I think, Manjot, almost much the same story here with the Packers as what happened with the Vikings. We thought that the Packers would be much more just better in this game, I guess, and more up to the task of taking it to the Eagles and making this a really close game. The Packers, in the past, have always been great in the playoffs. It doesn't matter where they ended up seated in the playoffs. So, of course, last season against the Cowboys, absolutely shocking the Cowboys in Dallas with Jordan Love as well. I think we all thought that that's the way it was going to go, that it would just be a closer game, but we all went, but the Eagles will probably get the go in the end through guys like Saquon Barkley. And of course, Saquon still got 119 on the ground from 25 carries, so I think we were all correct there. But I think we just thought that we would get a lot more oomph out of the Packers side.
Yeah, I feel like that as well, and I think the defining moment really was the start of the game, the opening kickoff, and they just absolutely blundered it. Right off the bat, Keyshawn Nixon drops the ball. They're fighting for it. Initially, they had it, and it gets ripped away again from the Packers. The Eagles recovered it in the end. And I think that was just a very stark reminder just how bad some of the special teams gaffes have been for the Packers over the years in the playoffs. I mean, of course, we're going back to 2014 against Seattle. Brandon Bostick, the onside kick just bounced off his face mask. More recently, 2021, the 49ers, they came into Green Bay, underdogs, blocked the punt, just went into the house, and all 13 points off the Niners that day for the win came off special teams. It was just really, that's another area that over the years, Aaron Rodgers, when he had all those great Green Bay teams, they didn't focus enough on defense and special teams, came back to bite them. I think it came back to bite them here. And just off that kickoff, just one play, I feel like one play alone, you just knew they were in trouble. They were going into a hostile environment. They needed to do absolutely everything perfect against the number 2 seeded Philadelphia Eagles. You go in there, you fumble the kickoff, and immediately you're under the pump. And that's really where Love started to crumble under pressure, throwing those 3 interceptions. It felt like everything from there just went downhill for the Packers going into such a hostile environment. I have to keep repeating that because Philadelphia is one of the roughest places to play. And really, it just really was too much for the Packers to come back from. Those 10 first quarter points were just a lot. And of course, again, going back to special teams, McManus missing that field goal after Love had missed Tucker Kraft in the end zone. Those little plays, those little miscues always come back to bite you in the playoffs. Those are really important plays. And I feel like the Packers, all those little moments, they all just stopped them from actually building any sort of momentum in this game. And that's what really crueled them in the end.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. That and 3 interceptions by Love. Like, that's just, you just can't be doing that in these big pressure moments, especially when it was so close. Like when it was 10-0 at halftime, that's so achievable to come back from in any circumstance. You just need that tiny bit of luck to go your way. And as you said, mate, from the kickoff, from the first return, from a kickoff return, it was pretty clear that luck was not going to go the way of Jordan Love and the Packers on the day.
I feel like as well with Jordan Love, just got to go into it. I think Love, it's a really precarious situation for him now. I have not been a big fan. I've always thought Packers fans always overrated him quite a bit because he sat behind Rodgers, who sat behind Favre. They thought he was this third coming of their great quarterback lineage. But I feel like I haven't seen it enough from Jordan Love. Granted, maybe his receivers aren't up to the task. Maybe he doesn't have that true alpha dog, number one wide receiver. But I still haven't seen Love just really take the reins this season. I know last season in the playoffs, he was just going crazy against the Cowboys and for most of the game against the Niners. But this season, I feel like he just didn't take the reins in any of the big games. And it was really costly going 1-5 in the division, just sneaking into playoffs as 7th seed as well. It just felt like Love hasn't taken that next step that everyone was expecting him to. And he got that big money contract as well. You got to remember all of these little things for Love right now, because his career could be going one of two ways, where he could be very, very overpaid, holding back the Packers and their talent, or he could develop into that guy that everyone's expecting him to be. And I haven't seen that development this season. I've got to say it. The progression hasn't been there. And the Packers, for the most of the season, I know I kept bringing it up a lot of the times during the season when I was on the shows. I just haven't believed in this Packers team. Always thought they were pretenders, and it showed in this game. I feel like Jordan Love, once again, he just didn't step up to the task, Ian.
Yeah, mate, totally agree. I cannot agree more. It was just, I think we really do need to see some actual progression. They obviously like him, and they think he's there. They've been giving him more and more every week, it would seem, more things to do. He's running a 2-minute offense by himself. You know, he's getting more say in how it goes. So they clearly think that he is the future for the time, at least for the time that they've signed him for. And they think that he is going to be there for a long time because they're giving him more and more. But I think you still need to, if you're being giving more and more of the tools to achieve, you need to be taking bigger jumps in the NFL, because it's such a fickle place. You can easily be replaced by anybody at any moment, and they can do better than you. You just go out there and ask a bunch of the mediocre quarterbacks that have done well. Go out there and ask Sam Darnold. Go out there and ask Baker Mayfield, who are two guys who were thrown off scrap heaps by teams and were both in the finals this year. You have to achieve more than what you are. And Jordan Love's been to the finals, been in playoffs twice in the 2 years he's been a starter now. That's a good thing. You need to get those. You need to drag those Packers kicking and screaming, Jordan, to the divisional or the championship round to really show that you've progressed. And that should be their number one priority for next year. I assume it would be. I assume Super Bowl is number one priority. But his priority should be focused on that. Yeah. Definitely have to, mate. They're still so young on offense, and and defense as well. The whole team is so young, and they are obviously building something there, so they need to do that. So, So as you said, mate, just recapping on that, it's Rams v Eagles in Philadelphia next week now. Early game on Monday in Australia, which is 7 a.m. It doesn't even feel like an early game at 7 a.m. It's after
no
breakfast.
5 a.m. games.
It's after breakfast. That's so good. So that is going to be an absolute cracker, of course, once again. Righto, let's go to... We got two more AFC ones to do, and I reckon let's go to Pittsburgh at Baltimore. The Ravens, Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry were absolutely on fire this weekend. They destroyed the Steelers, especially their defense, who are the most expensive defense in the entire league for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They did not play like that at all in terms of their worth or their experience, because they're incredibly experienced to be that expensive. Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson accounted for 267 rushing yards between them of the 299 total rushing yards that the Ravens got this weekend, and completely obliterated Russell Wilson the Steelers and all of the Steelers defense to just make this just such an easy game. The scoreline doesn't read like it was such a domination, but Manjot, it was an absolute domination from the first whistle.
Oh, it certainly was, and it was a lot like us boys previewed it. It was just going to be a Ravens bloodbath, or it was going to be Pittsburgh pulling it out somehow. And Pittsburgh, they took the opening kickoff. Tomlin wanted to set a statement really early that they wanted to get the ball and score because the Ravens do have some troubles playing from behind. But look, they couldn't get anything going on offense. It just looked like Russell Wilson wasn't able to do anything against the Ravens defense, who have surprisingly been playing up the back half of this season and into this first playoff game. They have been really standing up to some of these teams, and I think they really showed again this Ravens defense just how great they were. But I think really the story, as you said, Ian, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, is this the best backfield we have seen in a long time? Because you're having one of the best quarterbacks out there, one of the best running backs out there, probably top 2, top 3 in their respective positions, depending on where you rank them. And they're just great threats on the run game. I mean, one of my favorite things watching this game was just how confused the Steelers defense was. Do we go for Lamar Jackson? Do we go for Derrick Henry? On that long touchdown run Derrick Henry had, you look at some of the behind the quarterback film. There are 3 guys standing right next to Lamar Jackson, like on Lamar's side of the field, after he's handed off the ball to Derrick Henry. Like, they focus 3 guys on Lamar Jackson, the rest of them on Derrick Henry. And granted, someone in the middle of that defense should have made a tackle, but Henry just outran them all. Like, how is that fair? And then you go to... Yeah,
and Lamar described that play as if it was Lightning McQueen just zipping through cars in the movie Cars on a racetrack. That's what he said. Derrick Henry, it was like watching Lightning McQueen go through cars. Such an apt thing, because it really was. He just took off.
100%.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, 100%. And Lamar, let me just tell you, you're never too old to watch Cars. Awesome movie. Awesome series. I just really got to say that to Lamar there. And speaking of Lamar, that end of the half, that one play, 11 seconds left on the goal line, he takes off 9 seconds. And a lot of people be like, oh, what the heck? He's wasting all this time. What's he doing? Could have played another couple of plays in that time. But he's just zipping around the pocket. No one can catch him. Even TJ Watt, one of the best pass rushers in the league, can't catch Lamar Jackson in that moment. And he's just zipping around the pocket, finds Justice Hill, dumps it off to him, touchdown. Yeah. And you're just like, oh my god, this guy can pass it, he can run it. Just an incredible quarterback. Just love watching Lamar Jackson every week. That's why he's my favorite quarterback in this entire league, Ian, as you know. As I've been saying for so many years on all of these podcasts, just how much I love Lamar. Once again steps up, and in the playoff game too. Just I want to see him go on a big run this season. Hopefully he can get on that sort of run and just really silence some doubters, show that he can win some playoff games, because man, he's just such a good player to watch.
The Steelers put TJ Watt on Lamar Jackson here in this game. Like, they focused him on Lamar and a bit on Derrick Henry as well. And, you know, this is the 5th game in a row that TJ Watt has not recorded a single stat. No sacks, no tackles, no pressures. Unreal, isn't it?
Yeah, it is definitely unreal. And I feel like there is some question marks there, Ian. I know I'm saying it right in the aftermath of this game with the Steelers. I feel like there is something deeply wrong with the franchise. I've got to go straight to the head coach. I've got to go to Tomlin. I feel like Tomlin has overstayed his welcome quite a bit. I have to go into him. It's been nine years nearly since he's won a playoff game. It's just incredible. Hasn't won one since the 2016 season. So 8 years since he's won a playoff game. There have been some horrible starts in those playoff games since. I mean, you go back to 2017, heavily favored against Jacksonville, and Jacksonville went up by 3 or 4 touchdowns. Then go like 2020 against the Browns. Then Baker Mayfield and the Browns, they put up like 3 or 4 touchdowns to go ahead, and it was like 27-0 in the first half. And then you go here, another big start by the Ravens. And you got a guy like TJ Watt. He's not really doing much as well. You're expecting someone like Mike Tomlin, who's a defensive-minded head coach, to really scheme up something to get him open, maybe delay his pass rushes a bit, maybe send in a few blitzes here and there. I feel like Tomlin's game planning hasn't really been that good. His hiring at offensive coordinator, shall I say, hasn't been great over the last few seasons. He hasn't got enough out of his offenses. Never found a really elite quarterback either. I've been really into this one, Ian, all weekend because I just feel like it hasn't been talked about enough just how overrated people have made Mike Tomlin. Just all these winning season stats and everything. And, he's doing so much with so less and all of these sort of things. And we wouldn't be here without Tomlin. I feel like there has to be a point where Tomlin, he has to be on the hot seat at some point. I know the Steelers came out the day after the game saying he's going to come back. But I feel like Mike Tomlin, the time is very much ticking. It has to be ticking. Otherwise the Steelers, they're going to be falling backwards. They're in that very bad spot, Ian, where you don't want to be as a franchise, where you're just getting into playoffs or just missing playoffs, but you're not good enough to make it to Super Bowl. You're not bad enough to get a good draft pick. They've been in that spot for too many years, and now they're just stuck in their ways.
Yeah, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this a lot as the off-season goes on too, as we move past Super Bowl. But just real quickly, I mean, you've got the most expensive defense in the entire league. You've got two quarterbacks, both of which were only on 1 year prove-it deals. They're so inexpensive, and I can't see that you're going to keep either. You've got a very unhappy George Pickens who is out there in the media saying a lot of things about the team. It's not a good look. You don't have a lot to play with, and as you said, Manjot, you're never bad enough to have a high draft pick, and you're never good enough to win playoff games or a championship. So you're sort of stuck in this weird limbo, and something does have to change. So the Ravens and Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry move forward to take on the Buffalo Bills, who, despite an early TD to the Denver Broncos, where we all thought, hang on, we might have a game here, absolutely dominated the Broncos from that point onwards. That was the only thing really good that the Broncos did in this game, and they just fell apart on all things, on all cylinders, essentially. They just dropped cylinders. Sean Payton was dialing up the craziest pressure plays for Bo Nix and things, and just trying to throw this rookie in kind of at the deep end, but also chasing his tail at the same time. But you were up against a Buffalo Bills team who showed us what we were seeing earlier in the season, and just such a dominant performance and a very, very dominant Josh Allen.
Yes, indeed. And I feel like with Allen, very efficient performance from him. And really, that was the difference between the two teams. I feel like one team just doesn't have that playoff experience compared to the other team. And I think Sean Payton, though, he did a really good job coaching this game. I know they lost by 24 points, but he threw in some wrinkles. As you said, that first drive, they did really well, threw that long touchdown. Rookie to rookie, first time that's ever happened in the postseason. Just shows you how young this Broncos team is. And after that, they did the fake punt play as well. Of course, they had to punt on the same drive. I mean, they did get the punt down at the 1, but it was still not the result they were after. But yeah, just those little execution sort of things. They were getting into those sort of those little things weren't going their way execution-wise, missing field goals and those sort of things. It just wasn't working really for them, and it just showed inexperience-wise. That's all it really was. Just the experience wasn't there for Bo Nix in this team, and it felt like the Broncos, they really went into the postseason, into the playoffs as really the Cinderella sort of team. This team that snuck in, came out of nowhere. Everyone was just sort of going for them because they made the playoffs for the first time in 9 years, ever since they won that Super Bowl with Peyton. They had been down, and I feel like for the Broncos, this was a real good season for them, no matter how it ended. I feel like a lot of Broncos fans are feeling the same way as well. They know, despite the disappointing ending, they came further than they would have thought they would have at the start of the season. None of them would have expected to go to playoffs, and I feel like that was really the story. And for Buffalo, I mean, heck, they expected themselves to just make it and just get into the divisional round and set themselves up for the juicy matchup.
Yep. Man, there's not much more I need to say too much more on this game, but just watching some plays where, and I'll talk about this with the Vikings game, where the O-line wasn't holding the pocket long enough for Darnold to do things, right? But when I'd watched, I've compared it to people online already. Go back and watch the Bills game. The Bills O-line hold that pocket long enough for Josh Allen to not just figure out where he's going, but at times he had no receivers and he's holding the ball and pointing and telling his receivers where to move before he throws it. Like, it's such a long time. And he was just directing traffic, and even to the point where he then makes a throw and then blows up at the refs because he's telling them there's a holding there, there's a holding right there, and you're missing it. Like, he's telling the refs during the game while he's got the ball in his hand that they're missing penalties. It's outstanding, and of course the refs actually had a bit of a word to him about. Apparently, he was swearing at them because he was telling them how bad they were doing, or the fact that they were missing penalties. That's hilarious. So it's just they have to tell Josh Allen to calm down. But he was just in his bag, and I think if he continues to play this way, James Cook with 120 on the ground, if he continues to play that way, if we continue to get the absolute best of Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir. And even, good old Dawson Knox still got back up with a bunch of yards as well in this game. We continue to see this. One hell of a game next week. And, of course, that is Sunday Night Football in America. It's the 12 o'clock game for us here on Monday against the Ravens. That is going to be a sensational matchup to start with. But I reckon I know that whoever comes out of that game is going to the Super Bowl. Forget championship. So whoever comes out of that game, Bills and Ravens, is going to that Super Bowl.
Yeah, that is a good call, I reckon. And really, I'm hoping so. To be fair, I'm tired of seeing the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. But yeah, of course, both teams. It'll be a big matchup to see who plays. Probably the Chiefs, unless the Texans cause a surprise again. Well, let's see what happens, but let's just say this game is going to be great. Can't wait to preview it with you on the weekend, Ian, of course, with you and the rest of the gang as well. But just quickly, just on this game, really loved seeing Josh Allen throw the ball, even not being scared of all-pro cornerback Patrick Surtain. He was really targeting him. He just didn't care. Allen just knew that he had a few things dialed up. He knew that he could get past Surtain, past that great secondary. I think that just showed how much confidence Allen has going into this postseason, and really just he's not afraid to take risks even against the best CBs in this game.
Yeah, I know, mate. And he's not at all. And it's just amazing that he's like. And I know you've got this love for Lamar and the Ravens, but I know even you admit that you got Josh Allen and this team of nobodies, essentially. Like, there's no out-and-out number one receiver. You've got James Cook, and just he is the only running back. There's no real backup that is coming in to carry things for Cook when he's not there. And they're just, a bunch of different guys, and yet they're still playing like this. I mean, can you imagine it? You get if you get an actual wide receiver onto this team for next year, it could be outstanding for Josh Allen.
Yeah, or they develop Amari Cooper a bit more. He came in mid-season, so he hasn't really had that much time learning the playbook and everything to fully have something. So imagine him having a full off-season with this team.
Imagine a George Pickens or even a Tyreek Hill on this team.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. A Tyreek Hill would be insane if they got him off a trade from their division rival, that would be something unheard of, but they'd have to give up like 5 first-round picks or something.
But like a very unhappy George Pickens right now, in Pittsburgh. And they could probably get something decent back to do that. But we can talk about that stuff in the off-season. But
that is funny as well, because they were like this close to getting Antonio Brown back when he was disgruntled with Pittsburgh until they shipped him off to the Raiders. So, yeah, a bit of a funny NFL history bit of trivia there, Ian, as well.
Yeah, absolutely, I know. So, all right. So, the 4 matchups we have for divisional round, and we will talk a lot about these with the boys later in the week. Texans, Chiefs, Commanders, Lions on Sunday in Australia, and then on Monday, Rams, Eagles, and finishing it out 10:30 a.m. with Ravens and Bills. That will decide who's going forward to that championship round and who has the chance to go forward to, of course, the Super Bowl. We'll be back, Manjot and I will be back later in the week for the second of the AGN playoff series weeks with Maddie, Taylor, Nick, Brad, and possibly Isaac as well. He is on holidays at the moment with his family, which is why he's not here tonight. But we'll see how we go. There's definitely going to be 6 of us again, maybe 7. It is going to be amazing. We will preview all 4 of those games. We will have for you a bit of a recap on our best bet lines for our mega multi, just to see how that fared. And we'll also be back with a whole fantasy show where we'll do another fantasy draft for the divisional round. So thank you very much for joining myself and Manjot and recapping some games. We hope you've enjoyed the episode. Please make sure to listen out for the other ones later in the week. And follow us on socials. You'll find everything at linktree/Aussie Gridiron Network. Apart from that, thank you very much. And we'll see you later.
Thank you.
The G'day Gridiron podcast is brought to you by the Aussie Gridiron Network, a network of Australian podcasts bringing the fun and a little bit of the Aussie larrikin to the NFL and fantasy football. Check out our other amazing productions. Australia's #1 fantasy football podcast, the Aussie NFL Fantasy Show. Everything about the local game at Aussie Gridiron today. Manjot's Pastry Press on Instagram and YouTube, and Australia's very own Dynasty podcast, No Huddle Dynasty. Find links to everything at linktree/Aussie Gridiron Network.